Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Fine, thank you, in this hot weather.
Yes, I noticed. I'm Pat Michael. I'm a volunteer with the Middletown Historical Society. And Keith Schneider is our videographer. He's here as well. And we are in the Appoquinimink Community Library in Middletown, Delaware. Welcome, relax,
Thank you.
and we'll go through these questions. What the Historical Society is attempting to do is to demonstrate the history of Middletown through your memories and experiences that you've had throughout your life. And we're hoping to capture, among all of the videos, the time between the 1900s and present.
I see.
So we'll get started. What is your full name, and do you have a nickname?
Joanne Elizabeth Armstrong. Friends from long ago, only one or two, call me Josie.
Okay. When and where were you born?
I was born here in Middletown, and you want the year?
Yes.
Yeah. September 16th, 1946.
Were you born at home?
No, I was born in, I don't recall which hospital, but one in Wilmington.
Okay. How did your family come to live here?
My family first came to the United States, America, and were in Hagerstown, and then came to this part of the territory in the early 1800s, because there's a record of my relative voting for Thomas Jefferson, and it was this area. And that's when we first came here.
And your family had a farm, right?
Right,
From
we
the
have a
beginning?
farm.
How many generations were?
Let's see, I'm counting up. Father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. And great-grandfather was born in 1834, so
Okay.
don't recall exactly when it was established.
Okay. Were there other family members in this area when they moved here originally?
That I don't know. I know there's a branch of Armstrongs in the Odessa area. I just don't know.
Okay. What was the house that you grew up in like? How many rooms did it have? Did it have electricity, indoor plumbing, telephone?
I grew up in a brick house. Husband would correctly name the architectural term, but it was built in about 1859, just south of Armstrong Corner. And the bricks came from the brick factory at Armstrong Corner. I don't recall which corner that was. How many rooms? It's deceivingly, it looks larger because it's built on an L shape. So there are 4 rooms upstairs, a 4-room attic, 4 rooms downstairs. And there was a brick, it was a brick house, but there was a wooden addition for the present kitchen that was 1889.
And did you have indoor plumbing when you were growing up, and
Yes,
electricity?
in electricity, my father recalls, yes, it was lit by gas when he was growing up. He was born in 1904. The electricity came, I believe, in the 30s. Yes, indoor plumbing, but there was an outhouse and facilities inside until the real bathrooms got installed about, I think, 1954 or 1955.
Okay. What is your earliest childhood memory?
Oh, gosh.
Good or bad?
Right. That I don't recall earliest. I do remember just now my mother taking me to first grade at the newly built wing of what is now the Everett Meredith Middle School, and then was the Middletown School, which held first grade through 12. I probably have some memories before that, but that's what flashed in my mind. Oh, I went to preschool. I don't know what the term was, whether it was kindergarten or something else, at the Episcopal Church in Middletown, St. Anne's Episcopal Church.
Okay.
So I would have been, what, 4 or 5 at that time.
Was going to school the first day a big excitement for you, or
Yes.
that you remember?
A little bit of, oh my gosh, this is so new, and my mother's going to leave me here. But soon adjusted, that's all I recall of that little nervousness of first grade, of first day.
What kind of games did you play growing up?
Board games. I remember playing with a classmate, Diane Inselo, that's her maiden name, and she lived in Middletown. Piggly Wiggly and other kinds of things in, what were we, 2nd or 3rd grade. I don't recall what games we played at home until I was old enough to learn a card game of canasta. My parents and I played canasta often and with a friend.
Did you play outdoor games at all?
No, I wasn't athletic. I do recall croquet, setting up a croquet set in a rather uneven front lawn. And in the 50s, the hula hoop came in. But other than that, that's all I recall at the moment.
Okay. What was your favorite thing to do for fun? So go to the beach, go to the movies, something else?
Reading. My father was a dairyman, so he was pretty much kept at home, and my mother didn't drive. So excursions outside the home were far between and depended on other people growing up, etc. Favorite excursion?
Yeah, or any
Oh,
other.
the movies, going to the Everett movies. I remember growing up, the Lions Club, I believe, or was it Rotary, had a Christmas show for youngsters. And that would be a movie, and they gave out treats.
Mm-hmm. Did you have family chores? And if so, what were they? And what was your favorite?
Oh, my. I was an only child and a girl, and my father was very much, I guess, women's work is inside, men's work is outside. I drove the tractor when it was fun, and then when it got to be work at age 12, I didn't drive it anymore. Indoors, a little bit of cooking, some dusting and straightening up, but nothing more definitive than that growing up.
Okay. What was school like for you as a child? What were your best and worst subjects? And where did you attend? You had said you went to the Middletown school. And did you go to college?
Best and worst subjects. I liked history and English. Worst subjects. I don't believe we had much of science until, science I would say was my worst subject, until I got into 4th grade and 5th grade, when we had a separate science book. I would say science would be my worst subject.
Did you go to college?
Oh, yes, I did go to college. I went to the University of Delaware, and then later on for my career, furtherance, I went to Catholic University in Washington, D.C. to get a master's in library science.
Was that your major in college?
History and American Studies in college. And then after I became employed as librarian at Reading Middle School, I went to the University of Delaware and took credits in library science so that I could be certified to work in the state as a librarian.
Okay. Do you remember any fads in your youth, like popular hairstyles or clothes?
I came in at the end of the poofy poodle skirts, fads. The jitterbug. I don't remember about the hair until later, like in the 60s when it got all poofy. That's all I recall. The other fads.
Okay. What were your favorite songs and music?
Oh gosh, I was in the beginning of the rock and roll era, and I liked mostly music of the day, not classical, not real country, but music of the era. Favorite song, nothing pops to mind at the time. Oh, and then of course we were all excited when there was the English invasion in 1964, and I was a senior in high school at that time.
Did you swoon at the Beatles?
Yes.
Did you go to the dances?
Yes, at the high school, and then at the time, the Lions Club also had dances which were held what was then the Armory, and you can probably recall what street that was. They would be in the summertime.
And all the kids went to the Armory for dances.
Yes, yes. There would be, oh gosh, 60, 80, 100, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have any pets, and if so, what kind, and what were their names?
We always had a Chesapeake Bay as an outside dog growing up, Lizzie. And then my mother was fond of a rat terrier, and that was the inside dog. Now we didn't, I would call them pets as they were in their later life. My father had workhorses that he kept and did not particularly use as draft horses since he had a tractor, but he kept them there until they died. And one was Edith. She died when I was in 4th grade, but I would go and get her put a halter on her, I think, yes, not a bridle, and pull her up to a fence and climb up and get on her, or else take her down to the tree that's midway in the lane, climb the tree and get on her back. I rode bareback. And if I fell off, she would stand there and wait for me.
That's a good horse. And you had a friend who used to borrow Edith.
Yes, our neighbors up the road, Everett Meredith, didn't have a tractor in the early 50s, so he would send his daughter, Patsy, to walk down what was the measurement, 3/10, 4/10, half a mile, to our house and get Edith and ride her back so that Mr. Meredith could use her in plowing, and then she would have to ride the horse back. And she tells the story that she always got a little nervous as she approached our house because her male friend would whinny, and if she heard him, she would go faster and faster and faster. Edith would, and she was afraid of falling off being bareback and no saddle.
We did hear that story. What was your religion growing up, and what church did you attend?
Methodist, and I attended the Bethesda United Methodist Church on East Main Street.
Do you still go?
As a child, yes. I'm a member at present.
Were you ever mentioned in the newspaper or other publications?
Well, yes, I recall during high school when I had some function as in selling ads for the upcoming yearbook, and that would be published in the newspaper in the transcript with a photograph of perhaps my selling an ad. During the plays that I was in, and photograph of those. That's my earliest remembrance of that. I don't recall later on.
Did you keep copies of those transcripts?
Perhaps so. I couldn't tell you where they are now.
They're good history.
Yes, good history.
Who were your friends when you were growing up?
My friends were, of course, my neighbor, Patsy Meredith, now Patsy Meredith Warner, Linda Brady, Diane Insolo, Judy Steele, who, when I was in, 6th or 7th grade, unfortunately moved to Smyrna, and I was very upset. Barbara Sheets, Lynn Money,
All the big names in Middletown.
yes, and the boys. Who were the boys that I was closest to? Murray Smith, Gene Pratt.
Pratt's Hatchery.
Yes, Pratt's Hatchery.
What world events had the most impact on you while you were growing up? And did any of them personally affect your family?
World events.
Wars or big things like that?
Unfortunately, I don't recall world events. Oh, yes, I do. Here comes one. When I was in elementary school and it was the Cold War, we would have the drills of getting off your seat and either hovering under the desk or hovering into the hall, facing the wall and covering your heads because there was going to be some kind of an attack because of Cold War. Was that frightening? Yeah. I don't recall that it was particularly, no. It was just, oh, here we go again, we've got to do this.
Okay.
Right, right.
Were any of your family members in the wars, serve in the wars?
No, my father was not because he was needed at the farm. I don't know what kind of exemption that was, other than his age, right. Born in 1904, he would have been too old for World War II and too young for World War I.
Okay. How are holidays, such as birthdays and Christmas and Easter, or whatever you celebrate, how are they celebrated in your family, and do you have special traditions?
How were they growing up, that kind of thing, yes. At Christmas, I think as a lot of people, we didn't put a Christmas tree up until almost Christmas. I recall my parents asking me, would I like to help them put the Christmas tree up Christmas Eve, or would I like Santa Claus to bring it? And of course, I love the surprise of getting up and seeing it Christmas morning, so I would say, I want Santa Claus to bring it. So Christmas morning would come, and I would get up at 5 or 5:30 and knock on my parents' door, get up, it's Christmas. And of course, they might have had 2 or 3 hours sleep making all the preparations. Traditions. There were no traditional food or other thing that I recall, but that was the tradition I most recall growing up.
How about Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving. No, unfortunately, coming from a very small family, it was always just the three of us. I remember later life in high school and college, we would ask my father's cousin to come down from Wilmington, but her response would be, oh no, that's for family. Well, isn't she family? But it was always just the three of us.
Okay. How is the world different today than it was when you were a child?
Much faster, much more aggressive traffic, much, how do I describe this? We all have less of an attention span, don't we, because of social media and TV. People paying attention, slowing down, listening to other people. Yes.
What do you know about your family's surname? You said a couple of things.
Surname, Armstrong, right. Way back in history, the Armstrong was Scottish, Scots-Irish, and the Armstrong name came from the Scots raiding, the Armstrongs raiding the southern borders and keeping the southern borders safe from the English. That's the wrong surname. That's my husband's surname. I was about ready to mention history of his.
That's okay. You can go back to yours.
His name is Janney, Janney, and I asked him when we got married if he didn't mind if I kept my maiden name, which was Armstrong, because after all, I was in my late 40s and Armstrongs had lived at Armstrong Corner, and I needed Armstrong to live there, but I digressed. We found later in life, maybe 20, 25 years ago, there was a Janny in Canada that had written a book about the Jannies and their travel to the United States.
That's exciting.
Ship, yes.
Did you ever get a copy of it?
Yes, do have a copy of it.
That's a gift,
Yes.
I think. Is there a naming tradition? Well, it's only you. Is there a naming tradition in your family, such as always giving the firstborn son the name of his paternal grandfather? Did you find that with your grandfather or father? Or?
Yeah, there were a lot of Benjamins. My father was Benjamin Irvin Armstrong, but he always went like B. Irvin, and people called him Irvin. His father was Benjamin Vance, and all of a sudden I'm having a blank on the father before that, but it seems like there was a similar name.
Okay.
It might even have been Benjamin.
Okay. Considering that we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of our country this year, what stories have come down to you about your parents, grandparents, or more distant ancestors and their service to America?
Unfortunately, I don't recall discussing any service to America that any of my family was involved in. What came to mind was my father, when he was dating my mother in the 40s. My mother worked at her brother's luncheonette near the Four Corners, and if they received a telegram that needed to get to a family of a service member, sometimes my father would take that telegram out to that house. And of course, he didn't like that duty or job he was given or volunteered for.
That's a big thing. Did you, well, maybe you, but did your family do a lot of volunteer work besides that? That is a service.
No, not that I recall, because we were so busy with the farm. My father, as a dairyman milking cows 2 times a day, he did have help, and my mother could not drive, and in the summer had a large garden that we took care of.
Did your dad use his hands or the electronic milking machines at that point?
I always remember the electronic milking machines, right, yes. And we put the milk in milk cans that were picked up until sometime in the 1950s, when there came a milk tank that we could use and keep cool, and then a big tanker came and picked that up. And one memory I have is one snowy day, and the tanker got stuck after I think he had loaded up, and my father, there's a photograph of this somewhere, taking one of the draft horses and trying to pull the tanker with his draft horse. I don't recall the end of the story.
Oh, that's a shame. That would be like a TV movie or something.
I don't recall the driver having to stay overnight or anything, so they must have gotten it out.
Those were the days. Are there any stories about famous or infamous relatives in your family?
I don't recall any.
Okay. Are there any special heirlooms, photos, Bibles, or other memorabilia that have been passed down in your family?
There's a photograph taken in the late 1800s of must have been before 1899. My grandfather married in 1899, of him standing in front of the house at Armstrong Corner, and behind him are a horse and an employee holding the horse, and a woman, which was probably a housekeeper, and her child. And that is the oldest memorabilia or visual memorabilia we have of the house. And then there is a photograph of the grandmother's side, the Hendrickson side, of her house at Barley Mill Road, which was, 1700s, early 1800s. We do have an old family Bible, and in which there are newspaper clippings and that kind of thing that someone in the family gave to us, so I have not been through it totally.
Okay, that's exciting. I'm a history nut. What was the full name, well, what is the full name of your spouse, your siblings, and your parents?
I'll start with parents. Benjamin Irvin Armstrong, Elizabeth Buff Armstrong. She was known as Buff because when she was small, her 18-month-old older brother could not pronounce Elizabeth, so she became Buff. And my husband is Richard Allen Janney, and his son is Richard Hamilton Janney.
Okay. When and how did you meet your spouse? And what did you do on dates?
We met thanks to a neighbor of my husband's. I was working as a librarian in the Baltimore County school system, and both of his neighbors, the wife and the husband, were Baltimore County librarians as well. My husband, his first wife had died, and later in the year he needed a date for a business occasion, and the neighbor, Fred Mengers, took over my name and number on a pink piece of paper, and he called me, and what did we do on dates? That first date, I think the business thing fell through, but we went to the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra gala. We would go to the movies or to plays. I don't recall, out to dinner. And when we married, the people next door who had introduced us wrapped a wedding present with photographs of that pink piece of paper as the wrapping paper.
Oh, that's neat. Where and when did you get married?
We got married July the 15th, 1995, in the church I was a member of at the moment in Randallstown, Maryland, which is a suburb of Baltimore. It was memorable because that was the hottest day of the century. It was 106 degrees, 126 heat index. And a bridesmaid said to me, God said, Joanne is finally getting married. I'm going to make it memorable.
That is memorable. How would you describe your spouse? So something more than just what color is his hair, but...
Tall, very talented and crafty with his hands, has all sorts of projects, wood projects, metal projects, and a sportsman, a skeet shooter in his career. He did a lot of skeet shooting, was asked to join the Olympic team tryouts, and those are the things he does. But personally, very generous, very caring, very conscious of other people.
And what do you admire most about him?
Oh, his generosity, his caring for other people, his willing to help someone in need.
Okay, those are all good things. What does your family enjoy doing together? You and he, and I guess his son.
Yes. Just going out to what might be any special events. We don't have anything in mind particularly. Oh, we do subscribe to the Delaware Theater Company. And there are 5 productions a year, and that's in Wilmington. And we meet my college roommate and her husband, who come down from Westchester, Pennsylvania. We all attend the theater, and then we have dinner afterwards.
Okay. Well, you kind of mentioned this. What was your profession, and how did you choose it?
Librarian, and I chose it because I'd always liked history and English. And how did I choose it? In the early summer of my graduating year from college, 1968, I did not have a job yet. I'd gone on some interviews. Some my advisor said, don't even take that one. That's too many preparations for a beginning teacher. And the second one, I couldn't coach football. So anyway, I was at the Meredith house, and Everett Meredith said, well, you know, we don't have a librarian at Reading Middle School yet. And so that was my application for that job, and because he knew my background. And so I became a librarian at the middle school, and really enjoyed it because that solved the problem of history and American studies and English. And
That's neat. That's a neat story. If you could have had any other profession, what would it have been?
psychology, and I've thought about that in recent years. I did very well in psychology at school, and I recall a very helpful course in communication, in personal communication. That was a multi-day in-service course when I was employed as a librarian, but that was very impactful.
What accomplishments are you the most proud?
The accomplishments I'm most proud of is helping to start an organization for a rare neurological disorder that my father was affected by. In the 1980s, he was diagnosed with progressive supranuclear palsy. This has recently come to national attention because of the celebrities Dudley Moore, and most recently the Reverend Jesse Jackson also suffered from that disorder. In the beginning of the disease, it's often thought of as Parkinson's with the gait and the speech, but as it progresses, other features come to the fore, and it's the movement of the eyes and the inability to keep them level. The supranuclear refers to the part of the brain that has that ability to keep the eyes steady. And how that all evolved was I received a phone call from another gentleman in the Baltimore area who said, I found your name on the list of people who had written to the National Organization of Rare Disorders about this disorder, supranuclear palsy, and said they would be willing to speak with other people. And you're the only other person on that list of 32 that's in the area. Let's talk about getting together and starting an organization to promote research and help to families. And that was in 1990, unfortunately just 10 days after the death of my father, so he never knew that was going to happen. But now that we were in Baltimore for the organization for totally a volunteer organization until 1995, and then we got our first employee, and for the last 8 or 10 years we've been in Manhattan and have 15 or more employees to support our outreach, our research, our service to families.
That's exciting. How has the recent development affected the area in Middletown and around? That's a big question, I know.
I often go back to the thought that, gosh, I can't send a child, as I did when I was in 5th and 6th grade, on my bike up to Armstrong Corner and ride by myself all down Chop Tank Road and then come into Middletown and come back out. That would be very scary now with all the impact of the multitudes of cars, the traffic, the impatience and the aggressiveness of drivers that I believe we have now that we didn't have in a more laid-back era.
Anything else? There are so many things.
Read the question again, please.
How has the recent development affected the area?
Oh, okay. There's a development around the house.
Yeah, that's true.
In, 2018, it doesn't matter. We sold the property, which is now where Wawa is, the northern field before Armstrong's Corner. And in about 4 years ago, there were townhouses that are now built to the north and to the west of the 2.99 acres that remain with the house. So we now have a number of neighbors, close neighbors. And as my husband says, I can't go out and shoot a groundhog now. That's been a nuisance on the property with the neighbors here.
He could, but he'd get in big trouble.
Yes.
That's the way it used to be, though. How has the community changed? So if you think about it culturally, financially, educationally, religiously, we have a lot more churches than we ever had back in the day. Those kinds of things.
Well, we were very much an agricultural community when I was growing up. You had to go to Newark or Wilmington or Dover for other employment other than the few businesses that were in Middletown, the jewelry store, the department stores, the Silco's or Acme's. Would you rephrase the question again? What other kinds of...
How has the community changed?
Changed, thank you. The influx of people has brought a surprising amount of variety of backgrounds, of cultures, of people coming from high employment areas, and I was surprised to read the median income of residents in this area seemed very high. I'm not going to quote it because I don't recall what it is now. I recall having a conversation with people, a couple who'd come here who lived about 30 miles from Greenwich, Connecticut. And they moved here about 2 years ago or so and remarked about how the traffic was so much better here. I hear that often too from other people, whereas we natives are like, oh my gosh, the traffic is so awful. But how is the community? There are many more cultural opportunities that we can take advantage of. The Everett has great programs, theater and art. How has the community changed?
In every way.
In every way. That's all I can think of at the moment, unless you want to give me a hint.
That's okay. That's okay. What do you want people to know the most about yourself, your family, their business, etc.? Something that they will, hopefully when they watch this video, it will explain who you are and what they can remember into the future.
Chronologically, I would say my father's and grandfather's interest and in the dairy industry, in purebred Holstein Friesian cows from the late 1800s. And my father had a yearling bull that was considered second in the nation in his age group at about 1960 or 61. And that was published in the Breed magazine, Holstein Friesian World. And for myself, the fact that I helped to start this organization that now supports other families and research for this rare neurological disorder, and hope that we find an answer, as our scientific research person said, I think in our lifetime. So that should be soon for my lifetime, but anyway, yeah.
How about the lives you affected while you were a librarian? I mean, at the elementary school. Just think about what effect you had on those kids.
Well, sometimes even people do come up to me. I remember from my career in Baltimore, I was getting my hair done in a shop, and the manicurist from next door came over and said, "Oh, Miss Armstrong, I remember how you would save the newest copy of such and such magazine for me and put it under the counter." I remember one time being in the grocery store in Middletown, and a big, tall, strapping guy said, "Oh, Miss Armstrong, do you remember me? I was the guy with the big smile in 7th grade." And of course, he was now 6'2" or 3" and weighed 200 pounds. And unfortunately, I didn't remember him. But from time to time, I have people say something, right?
And they'll remember that forever. What do you want people to know the most about Middletown's past?
It has a proud tradition that the Middletown Historical Society is trying to preserve. First of all, in agricultural, a proud history in the early businesses, of course, the Witherspoon Inn, where Thomas Jefferson and George Washington stopped, the architecture of the downtown, the outlying peach mansions that were built due to the great peach industry that came into this area in the 1800s and was late 1800s and was unfortunately wiped out by the peach blight. I remember there was an article in the Transcript historical column once about how many railroad cars of peaches had gone out to New York during, or Philadelphia during a day or a week. It was astronomical. Sadly, some of those peach mansions are disappearing, but I hope they can be repurposed, adaptive reuse.
Do you, are you involved with the Peach Festival? Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I was involved more so early on. I was a judge for the parade one year. Unfortunately, in later years, it's been at the time period when I am out of town. But I do whatever I can that I'm asked to do or volunteer for.
Okay.
In the early years, in the 1990s, my husband and I participated in a parade and drove an antique car.
Do you know why we continue to have the Peach Festival? What's the historical background in it?
The Peach Festival itself?
Well, the reason that we have it every year.
Well, the reason why we have it is to raise money to support the Middletown Historical Society. And with that money, we are able to pay a person who, I don't want to define her job too much because I will get it wrong, but is contracted to look over the collection, and we put up exhibits. We are in the old Academy building, which was previously the old Academy school building where people went to school until it was closed, I don't know what year, and then it became the town hall. And then when they moved to the new building, the town council, town services did, the Middletown Historical Society is able to use that space. So we use that money for exhibits and for preserving items that we are given and for employees and interns and needed expenses there.
Okay. Those are all the questions that I have. Do you have anything you want to say outside of those? Do you want anything to leave us with? Some sage advice, maybe?
Not that I recall until I get 5 minutes down the road, right, as it often happens. But I hope that particularly the newcomers to this area come to appreciate the history that we have in Middletown and will come and visit the Historical Society and see our displays of what that history is, of the peach era, the peach festival, well, the peach industry here. We have that permanent exhibit, and the proud history of the academy. We have an exhibit of a schoolroom, right? And my father went to that school, and I said, did he ever ring the bell? He said, no, only the good kids got to do that.
Anything else?
I don't think
The agricultural heritage, anything you want to
the
say?
agricultural heritage. This area, what did my father grow, as did so many other farmers? Corn, wheat, soybeans, and one would have contract for people to come and visit with their big machinery and do harvesting, because individual farmers would not have the ability to purchase all that big expensive equipment. I remember serving iced tea to a number of workers, 10 or 12 workers, when I was a youngster, when they would all come to do the harvest of wheat or corn. I recall one of my first jobs with Patsy Meredith was out at the University of Delaware Research Place on Middletown Warwick Road, next to, I've forgotten which, whether it was the Coles or the Cochran's estate, where they had planted corn, and we would have to take these glycine bags and put over the tassels and tap so that those seedlings would come out, and then we would take them over to another row and put them atop other corn, so we wanted to cross-pollinate.
Mm-hmm. I've not heard that story before. That's
Patsy can probably recall it more vividly than I. I was younger than she doing it. And I would suffer from the heat being in 9th grade.
Well, that's all that we have, and I just want to say I really appreciate your coming and talking to us. The Historical Society, I know, will be thankful that you're able to do this, considering you're going back and forth between Baltimore and here. But the Historical Society plans to put these videos on their website and also on their YouTube channel. Most of the videos have already been put on the YouTube channel, so you might want to, if you have the time, go and listen to them. It's interesting that everyone that we've talked to has their own individual story, obviously, but there's a lot of continuation of the same story in our history, so that's well represented in the videos. So we appreciate it, and I hope that you will take advantage of seeing those videos.
Thank you for the opportunity. I certainly will.
You're welcome.
Thank you.